thank you so much for being a guest on Music Cap Show. My name is Naam Greene. I am going to be here with my co-host, Willie Wachter, and we're prepared to ask you a bundle of questions. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
All right. Well, we have seen your book. So you want to go ahead with the first question?
Yes. Dr. Is it Vermelle D? Is that okay?
Yes.
All right, excellent. So, what inspired you to actually write this particular style book?
I have been an educator, and I think you probably read my bio. I've been an educator for a lot of years. And just over those years, just seeing our boys not doing well, but not really understanding until late in my career just why. When I taught in high school, we just blamed the middle school teachers. When I was in middle school, we just blamed the elementary school teachers. What's the matter with these teachers? Can't they teach these boys anything? But it wasn't until I was finally at the elementary level where I began to see just where some of the problems would lie. And the main problem that I saw was a disproportionate assignment of our boys, especially our boys of color, to special education, discipline, getting suspended. And, I was part of the system. I was an assistant principal suspending, and also, so I had to be convicted of my own mistakes. I had assigned a group of children to in-school suspension, and the coordinator had them all lined up, to take them into a room. And I saw boy, 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 girl, boy, 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 girl. And I said, there's something wrong with this picture. And then I walked down the halls. I looked into the special education classes filled with boys, few little girls. I walked past the talented and gifted classes, mainly girls, few little boys. And of those boys, they're mainly Asian boys, but very few of our Black boys. And I said, what's going on? Not just with our Black boys, but with all our boys. So I began doing some research. One of the first books that I read was a book by Dr. James Dobson called Bringing Up Boys. And he mentioned another author in the space, Michael Gurian. So I purchased their books, read some articles, and I read about something that I had never been told as a teacher, as an administrator, that boys learn differently than girls. And I said, what? We had been told about visual learners and tactile learners and auditory learners and all the multiple intelligences and all that, but we never were told that the way that you learn is affected by your gender, that the male brain processes information differently, that the hormones of a male child are going to be causing him to act a certain way. I kept seeing our boys, and I was part of the problem too, I kept seeing our boys just what we called hyper. And when we'd have a parent in, we would kind of say, kind of coyly, well, Mrs. Jones, maybe you need to get him evaluated. Read between the lines, Mrs. Jones, put that boy on some medicine. And, that's what was happening with our boys. They were being medicated into submission. So when I retired, I knew my pastor wanted to start a school. So I went to him with all these statistics about how poorly our boys were doing. And he had a real heart for men and men's ministries. So I got the go ahead and I opened my school the day before 9/11, September 10th, 2001, September 10th. And I had one student. I had one student. And I began to talk more and more to other parents. And after about 4 months, my enrollment doubled. I then had two.
Wow.
But as time went on, we continued to grow as more and more parents said, wow, this is great. Now, some of the people at my church, they said, wait a minute. Why are you doing this just for the boys? What about the girls? And I told them, this is for the girls. We're raising up godly men with character, excuse me, who knows how to treat a young lady without calling her female. Excuse me. I get worked up when I hear about this. But But one of the things that I wanted them to know was that we were educating boys so that they could someday take care of their daughters. They
Right.
could go out and earn a living wage. They could go out and be a part of society and be a productive member of society. I need to go get some water. Okay, I think I've calmed down. So that's where it began. Just a heart for our boys and seeing them struggle. Tired of picking up newspapers and reading about, our boys doing this and they're doing that and mass shooters and everything. And then to see how society has really just criticized our boys all the time, talking about toxic masculinity and there's something wrong with the boys. They're just being boys. And I saw again, and I was there too, that when we see normal boy behavior, we think that there's something wrong. I even did that to my own son before I knew this. He was drawing pictures, and he's so creative. He's a graphic designer now, so creative. And he would draw pictures of ninjas, with these huge swords, and they'd be fighting and guts and blood and heads getting cut off. And my sister saw them, and she said, "Vermelle, I think you need to take him to maybe to get evaluated, maybe psychiatrist or something, because he's drawing all these kind of pictures." So I didn't know. So I said, okay. So my husband and I took him to a psychiatrist, and after about an hour and $300 later, he came out and he says, "I don't see anything wrong." And then my son, who at the time was about 14, he says to me afterwards, "Mom, why would you take me to a psychiatrist?" I said, "Well, VJ, I thought maybe something was wrong. You're drawing these pictures." He said, "Well, if you didn't want me to draw them, just tell me. Don't draw them anymore. I won't." I said, "Okay, now you tell me." $300 later. But certain behaviors just being normal boy behavior. When boys are wrestling and punching each other, they're not fighting. They're just saying hello. That when a little boy is sitting there and his mind kind of drifts off, he doesn't need medication to help him to focus. He just needs a teacher who knows how to put movement into her instruction, make it interesting to capture his attention. The teacher needs to change, not that little boy.
Right.
Yes.
Right.
Very good. I love how you actually capture the perspective and the difference between boys and girls. But I really love how you actually are trying to hold the education actually accountable and saying that there's some change that need to be done moving forward. And so I know in this book you probably go into a lot more details about it. I'll be honest, I haven't had an opportunity to read the book yet. But I mean, just by talking to you today, that's something I definitely have to get into because I'm a father. I have a young boy myself. He's 3 years old, and so and also I have a girl too as well. That's 13, and Naya, she has her boys too as well. So yeah, this is very fascinating. It's something that definitely needs to be brought to the attention and to the forefront.
And I like the fact that this is something that not so much as a book that you wrote, it's something that it evolves into your life. Like you said, your son, Forrest Day, because I have a son as well. So it's not so much as, someone can come to you and be like, "Hey, are you experiencing this? Or is this something that you wrote from a life perspective?" And you can, like you have a son, you saw him grow up. You saw the hardship of him just being a boy and what he's going through and things like that. And I love the fact in your book, like at the beginning, even the picture of your book, you're showing different, ethnic of boys, in your picture. So, and I also want to ask you, what made you, want to use that for your cover of your book, like just the different ethnic of pictures of the boys?
Sure. Mainly because this issue with boys transcends races. It transcends ethnicities. I capture articles from Google, from newspapers all around the world, be it Jamaica, India, Ireland, France. This issue of our boys not performing to the level of our girls. And I'm not saying that, I'm not pleased with the girls doing so well, but this is not a zero-sum game. Just because our girls are doing well doesn't mean our boys have to do less. our boys can be up there also. So what is happening in education that's helping the girls, and we like that, but it's not helping the boys. In America, I think a big problem is that the teaching force is predominantly female, especially at the elementary level, upwards of 95% female teachers at the elementary level, a little bit less at the middle school and high school level, but still mainly females. Also, for our Black boys, mainly white females are teaching them. White females who are diametrically different in culture and in gender. So unless these women know, and some do, unless these women know that boys learn differently than girls, and unless women whose culture is different can connect with Black boys on their culture, with their culture, there's going to be an issue. Our boys, sometimes they can get a little wild, Nancy, just a little wild. And you parents of boys, you know that. And they're active, but it doesn't require for them to be calmed down. That activity, that energy, that's how God made them like that. So all you have to do is just learn to channel that energy and challenge it towards learning. Same thing with our boys who perhaps get just fixated on one thing and they don't multitask very well. For example, the teacher who says, okay, I want you copying words from the board, Johnny. So Johnny's copying his words. Okay, I want you now to come over to the reading circle. And he's like, I'm copying words from the board. Johnny, come to the reading circle. I'm copying words from the board. Johnny, come over and listen. He's focused. Boys don't multitask well. He can't be copying words from the board, then all of a sudden switch over to reading circle, then all of a sudden switch over to this. They focus on one thing at a time. But then again, the ability to be able to focus on one thing at a time has allowed men to rise to the top to every occupation. Who are the top designers? Men. Who are the top musicians? Men. The top chefs? Men. The top of corporations? Men, because they're able to focus. The female brain, we can multitask because our brains are thinking about 10 different things at one time. I gotta go home and cook dinner, then I gotta go home and help me with homework, then I gotta do this. Yeah, and that's the female brain. Again, God in his wisdom knew that we, as mothers and heads of our households, domestically speaking, that we need to do a lot of things. Can you imagine, Naya, only being able to think of one thing at a time? So you're thinking about, I'm stirring this pot. The baby's crying. The dog is getting beat up by the little boy. I'm stirring this pot. Okay, the phone. We have to be able to do that.
Well, look, I'm glad you actually highlighted that. I mean, it definitely is a special skills that we have.
Well, speaking about
language, that we talk more. Our language centers develop earlier. So chances are your daughter learned to talk before your son did in coherent sentences and thoughts. And those language centers develop early, and then that goes into school. That helps our girls. And I'm speaking in generalities. There are some differences between girls and boys. But they go to school and they're able to learn to read before the boys, learn to write before the boys, because the typical 5-year-old boy, he doesn't want to sit and read and write. He wants to play. But yet,
yeah, I can vouch for it. I'm guilty.
Yes. But again, that's what makes our boys and our men special. When I was talking about being able to focus on one thing at a time, that's why men make better guards than women, because you can sit there and you can focus and you're distractible, so you notice different things that are going on. Women, you give us a good book and you can steal the whole store. We're just, ooh, good. The men are, just looking. Again, that is the advantage.
So if someone was to pick up your book, say, so to speak, in the Black communities that we have, what message would you like to give to those parents who have those boys and, you know, who has multiple boys in the house? What message would you give to them as far as coming from your book?
Well, the very first thing, and in my book, I have like 10 steps, and I kind of thought about, okay, what order should those steps be in? So the very first step is that I say you have to bond with your student, or a parent's case, bond with your son. And boys bond differently than girls. Girls have a natural hormonal propensity to want to bond. They are people pleasers. In a classroom, it's the little girls who say, oh, teacher says we should do this, so we're going to do this. Learn this. Why learn this? Because teacher said we needed to learn. I used to substitute teach after I retired, and I walk into a classroom and the little girls come up and they start getting me pictures of flowers, giving me candy. They're trying to bond with me. They want me to like them. As for the little boys, when I walked in, hey, they said, substitute teacher, let's play Sync the Sub. All right, recess. Boys bond differently. The way boys bond, they bond physically. They bond through games, through tough talking. They used to call it back in my day, playing the dozens, or Jonan. That's how boys bond. So if teachers and if parents want to bond with their sons, with their students, they need to bond the same way that boys bond with each other. Kind of a good natured punch or a handshake or a high five. My daughter used to teach at my school. The boys loved her. Not because she was a pushover. No, she was like, it's got to be this way or my way or the highway. But they loved her because during recess, she was out there playing soccer with them. They would be talking all morning. Oh, Mrs. Davis, we're going to get you on that soccer field. And she would say, oh, boy, you can't do nothing. You can't, just the kind of tough talking, trading barbs. And they loved her because she bonded with them. So unless you bond with a boy, unless you have that mutual respect and he respects you and feels that you respect him, he's not going to hear anything else that you say. You can just take the rest of this book and just throw it out the window because that little boy is just closed off to you. So first step is to bond. And then the second thing, because I'm a Christian, I feel that boys need that moral foundation. In my case, I believe it's found in Christ. Someone else may have a different religious tradition, but whatever that religious tradition is, our boys need to be grounded in some kind of faith, some kind of morality with character. Because a young man who grows up not thinking that there's someone greater than he is, not realizing that he has to answer to someone one day, or feeling that, he can do whatever he wants, that young man has remarkable potential to do damage. And we have seen this even recently, with no moral foundation, no spiritual foundation. So that's important also. So parents are doing themselves a disservice when they say, well, I'll let Johnny decide if he wants to go to church or not, or if I want him to go to synagogue or not. No, you take Johnny while he's still shapeable and moldable and say, this is what we believe. This is what you should believe, and not allow him to just discover what it is that he wants to believe.
Yes. And I'm glad how you really stress that too, because a lot of people, are not actually taking those actual moral stands and actually taking those steps and really implementing those in their livelihood, in their day-to-day life. So I'm loving how you actually are outlining steps, for them to actually implement it in their day-to-day life and giving them that blueprint for them to be successful moving forward. So I'm just getting excited just talking with you, and I'm loving the work that you're doing right now.
Thank you.
I'll definitely gonna rectify something. I'll have your book by tomorrow. Okay.
Well, it's not meant to be a cover-to-cover read, even though that'd be great if you do. It's more or less like being a resource, that, oh, my son isn't doing well with his reading. Let me see, what are some of the strategies that I could do? And that is a biggie for our boys. They must learn to read. And that's something I stressed with the boys in my school, because I would tell them, if you learn to read, you can teach yourself anything. You can teach yourself math. You can teach yourself social studies, science, whatever. But you must learn to read. And unfortunately, our teachers are not, and I'm speaking generalities. There's some teachers who are, but as a whole, education has not been teaching our children how to read properly for decades. And what happens is that we now have children in school, even graduating from school, who can't even read their diplomas. And a lot of those kids are our young men.
Mm. Very well said. Very well said. And in light of the recent changes that we have had over the past year, because it's definitely been a big shift with the pandemic of how education has been done. So I mean, of course, it's still too quick and still too fast. All of our kids are not back in school; they're still being homeschooled and things of that nature. But do you think that this will actually help begin that shift and maybe help promote kids into actually start reading and being a lot more into actually, finding research and things, because now they're being homeschooled. So now they're actually, forced, really to be, on a computer, have to actually, read those steps, read those assignments and things of that nature. So do you think the pandemic will help inspire that movement and keep that movement going? Or, just how do you feel about that?
Oh my, that is a loaded question. And I say that because it has so many different effects. One major effect that it would have, hopefully, is that parents are getting to see just what and how their sons and their daughters are being taught. So they can see, you have to learn that. You have to learn this. You're teaching them that. What is going on? Or they can see that their son is being forced to sit in front of that screen, 30 minutes, 40 minutes, 50 minutes, and he wants to get up and run. Parents should say, wait a minute. If he were in a classroom, the same thing would be happening. He would be, just kind of chomping at the bits to just kind of, I got to move, but yeah, he's got to focus. And that's difficult. That's so difficult for them. So learning from a screen, that's not the way that most boys learn. Again, there are some boys who are doing well. Some parents have said, oh, my son's doing better now than he did in the classroom. That's because perhaps there's no distractions. But most boys, though, they need that movement. They need to have that hands-on kind of thing. They need to be able to bond with each other. They need to have breaks, give them, teach them for 15 minutes, but give them a break. Allow them to stand up, walk around, go outside, come back. Even in the classroom, don't let him sit in front of that screen hour after hour after hour. I think it also has taught us that our boys are having struggles with the reading, because so much of that depends on reading. At first, when teachers were just handing out worksheets and the parents were like, Johnny can't read this, the parents should be saying, but Johnny's in 4th grade. Why can't he read this? Or Johnny's in 6th grade. Why can't he read? Parents, again, you need to check things out. They're not teaching our boys the way that perhaps, hopefully, some of you learned to read, which was with systemic, explicit phonics. Phonics fell out of favor back in the 50s. I don't know if you've ever heard of the Dick and Jane books.
Yes, I have.
Oh, okay. That was part of what was called whole language instruction. They were teaching children how to read by memorizing words, not sounding out the letters and sounding out the sounds. So when it said, see Dick run, 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 Dick, see Jane run, 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 Jane, they were telling you through repetition, they wanted you to memorize that R-U-N was run. And C, S-E-E was see, Jane. See, they would teaching you how to memorize words. And children were being sent home with stacks of index cards of words they had to memorize. Well, that's okay. That's okay if your language only consists of maybe a couple of thousand words. But in the English language that consists of thousands and thousands of words, they can't memorize them all. The brain can't absorb it. And that's what I saw in high school when I was teaching in high school, because I taught biology. So when they came to my class, they hadn't memorized arthropoda or data. So they would look at that word and they'd say, "What is that?" And I would tell them, "Well, sound it out," because that's the way I learned. And they would look at me, "What does that mean? Sound it out." And I would say, "What's wrong with those middle school teachers? What's wrong with those?" They're not teaching them. See, my grandmother taught me how to read with her 8th grade education. And she taught me the way she had learned to read, which was with phonetics, with phonics, but not so now. Now we're getting back to it now that we see that we've got these illiterate children coming through and test scores are in the basement, especially for our boys. So we're getting back to that, but it's so important that our boys learn to read. So again, an advantage is that parents are seeing that, number one, their boys are not being able to do the reading that they should. Math, what in the world are you teaching them math like this for? 10 times 2 is 20. Why do they have to then write an essay about why 10 times 2 is 20? What's with this box and whiskers stuff?
Yes, yeah, that's good.
I saw that when I was in public school, that the kids had to know on this exam, be able to explain a box and whiskers graph. And now here I am, bachelor's, master's, PhD. I have never had to use a box and whiskers graph. What? And again, with our girls, they had a lobby. They had an advocate or a bunch of advocates back in the 80s when girls weren't doing as well in math and in science. Well, the feminists, got on their podiums and started lobbying the legislators. We need to do something to help the girls in math and science. They're not as well. They're not accomplishing as much as the boys. So they began to even change the curriculum in math. They knew girls had this kind of advantage when it came to language, reading and writing. So math began to change. No more was it just computation, but it began writing about math, word problems, reading about math. And so the girls were really clicking with this, because they could write and read about it. But the boys, a test, for example, a test that was given in our local school system when I was in the public school, if you knew that 5 plus 5 was 10, and you put 5 plus 5 is 10, but you couldn't explain it, you did not do as well as the person who said 5 plus 5 is 7, but they wrote a wonderful essay about it. They told them they could explain how it should be done. They got a higher score than the child who knew the answer but couldn't explain it. What's wrong with that picture?
Right.
They were helping the girls and to the detriment of our boys.
Well, where can someone find your book? Like where if someone was to look your book up, where would we be able to find it?
It's on Amazon. It's Amazon.com. It's on Barnes and Nobles, wherever fine books are sold. I hope. Awesome. I know those two.
And will you be doing any book signing? Any scheduled book signing coming up?
Don't have any scheduled, no. But one of the things that's on my list of to-dos is starting a series of YouTube videos on Please Teach Me Like I'm a Boy. Hopefully, and they're not going to be long, maybe just 10, 15-minute snippets to parents so they can tune in to find out, just what's going on with our boys, talking about some of the issues that are going on in our boys, some of these news articles that are coming out, little boys being suspended because even virtual learning, because back behind him, he's got a BB gun leaning against the wall and he's virtually talking with his teacher, getting in trouble because of the BB gun back behind his wall that was, I don't know if you heard, it had fallen or something. So this little boy picks up his BB gun, passes it to someone else. It comes across the screen. The teacher reports him, and he gets suspended. How do you suspend a child? Virtually.
Wow.
Wow.
Mm-mm.
That's astonishing. That is seriously astonishing. Yeah, I think really, how things are now. I mean, a lot of things are exposed, and also a lot of people can see, there's so many different faults. But I really commend you as you taking a stance and actually like, let's see what we can do to change these faults and see what we can get better, and actually picking a subject and identifying it and coming up with some steps how we can make things better. Of course, we all know it's going to be a long journey, but at least you have started the journey. And so that way it allows you and allow others to actually work together. So that way our boys can be much more successful, not just for them, but also for their families, for their wives, for their daughters,
Yes.
for, forward too. So y'all, I definitely commend you on, all the work that you have done and all the research you have done.
Thank you. Thank you.
I really need some more lecture or something, or I need you to be on some school boards or something else like that.
Well, one of the things too is that I'm the executive director of the Boys Initiative. The boysinitiative.org is a nonprofit that was started about 10 years ago. One of the main thing, not just one of the things, but the main thing that we want to do is to recruit advocates, to prepare advocates, to inform people who want to advocate for their sons or advocate for the boys in their community, to give them information, to give them statistics so they can go before those school boards and say, look, did you realize that this is what's happening in schools? Did you realize that this is what boys are being taught, that they're at the bottom of test scores and at the top of suspension rates? What are you going to do about it? Just like those feminists went to bat for those girls back in the 1980s, and now the girls are thriving. Even our Black girls are starting to do better and better and better. And at the bottom of the heap, though, are our boys, our Black boys. So the Boys Initiative, we're redoing our website. We're firing up our social media next month as well. But our website's up now. We're going to revise that, but it's still operable, so someone can tap into it, sign up for our e-newsletter so they get our updates. We're going to be doing a conference later on in the year that people can, it's going to be virtual, so it can be all over the country. They can tune in and learn all about how they can help their sons.
Thank you so much for being on the show today. So where can we find you at? Not so much as your book. Where can we find you?
You can find me on the boysinitiative.org. If you send email to executive director at theboysinitiative.org, or simply S.A.C.R.E.D, S-A-C-R-E-D, Sacred Boys, B-O-Y-S, at Comcast.net.
All right. Well, thank you so much for being on Music Cab. We appreciate everything that you do. Very inspiring, very inspiring.
Very inspiring.
Thank you for having me. Thank you for having me. This has been a joy. And I want to do this. I love doing this because really, if our boys are in trouble, so are we all.
Yes.
Yes, we are. And thank you again.
Thank you so much.
Good luck with those sons and daughters.
Well, thank you, Dr. Greene. Appreciate it, my friend. And,
thank you, too.
And so we go to our next guest. And you two are fantastic. Good Lord. This is like watching the Breakfast Club without a bunch of egos. This is great. I've got your guys' next guest, so jump off the good foot and do the bad thing there, Naya. Thank you, my friend.
All right. Thank you so much for